Yes, you are audible.
Wait. All right. I'll be referred to as he or him. If you have any POI, please just unmute yourself because otherwise I won't be taking it. I'll promise I'll take one POI, okay? So please offer. Okay, without further ado, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. So panel, what does OO want in this debate? So what OO wants is that OO wants to defend the status quo of charity, right? In which like charities are like being able to fund all this money that they receive to the individuals, and that individuals want to fund this money to the charity that they feel like close to heart, regardless of whether this charity is like conducting this like form of like funneling is like the most effective way possible, because we say that what they propose is still so much worse than what the status quo is like, right? So before that, I would like to give several responses, right, regarding the Prime Minister's case before. So first of all, let's talk about their concern about the limited time and money, that all your effort is like wasted and not all the money is reached to the people. Like, first of all, we say like, no, we say that these funds will still end up going to the people that you want, right? Because like what they never characterize is like, what are the motivations and urges that people do then for the reason for them to do charity, right? Because like usually people do charity when they see someone that is like affected and they want to try to help them, right? So they need to picturize in which like what are the most important concerns that the individuals want to give the money to charity is. So regarding like, I don't think that their first concern is whether where all their money will come to them, but it's whether or not like whether this money comes to them at the first place, right? And like even if you say that, let's take it at the basis in which say that there are people like who wants all their money is like going to the people, like I think it will even spend more time and money, right, for that individual, because like when this individual needs to like really do their proper digging, like proper research on these charities that they are actually like maximizing it, and they need to read all the like the evidences that the charities like provide. Like I think it will take much more time, right? And this is like the time that is like spent, right? And I don't think like based on my calculation before, like these individuals want to try to help these affected people as soon as possible, right? The second response, like regarding that, these individuals are less likely to suffer because like the benefits they receive is like the maximum. Like no, I don't think so, because like first, this like limits the accessibility, right? Like these people, when the amount of like charities are like being cut down, like this, then it means that the amount of people that can be like that can be like under one charity is like all like a mess, right? It means like there will be only certain charities that will be helping individuals, and thus these individuals are being like stacked on top of one another. They need to queue, they need to wait longer, and thus it will be so much worse, right? It will be suffering more. And even if the individuals that are really like received, they're more effective. Now that the amount of charities like reduced, then you cannot simply donate the grassroots charities, the charities that you make impromptu, like during emergency situations like this pandemic, like during this COVID, like you want to try to help your communities, like building a Kita Bisa account. Like this is something that is like something that is like personal, but it's like something that is like totally gone right in the side of the world, because then it will not simply happen right because of their proposal. You're still hurting a lot of people, because it is these grassroots charities that are able to take place when it's this kind of emergencies like the pandemic, right? So now let's move on to my substantive. Now let's talk about what is principally in the interest of the charities, right, and the individuals that do them. Like charities, no matter how effective they are still based on altruism, right? Principally, like charities are built for the betterment of society. So the metric of whether they do so in the most effective or not shouldn't principally stand at all, right? Because charities are built on the principle that they're helping the world, make the world a better place, even in the most marginal amounts, like even by little, not the amount of maximum effectiveness that we want. Like that is like the foundations of like altruism, right? It's not how much utility you gain, but it's whether that your giving is like positive or negative, right? So they're burden to prove why individuals should only share. This is a burden to prove, right? Why individuals should only fund charities that can prove that they're using the most effective way to benefit others, even though it's still contributive, right, to the purpose of the charity and the individuals who donate them, right, which is altruism. And thus, if it's the interest of both charities and the individuals who donate, like notice that this motivation is what all these people care about, right? And this is what is really important, because note that these individuals are being pushed to helping others per se, right? Not because of like when they're being touched by seeing the war condition in Yemen, or like even in the like now in the current status quo, like seeing people struggling for oxygen tanks during this pandemic. Sorry if anyone is triggered by that. I'm sorry. And that's something really. It's really something that is really that is like the driving force of like charities. Like, and this is gonna be even more significant when I move on to my practicals later, right? Before that, any POIs? No? Okay. So what will happen if like this is not, and if their proposition pass, right, then this will severely limit the amount of help the charities can give, right? Because these charities will simply like will not be able to operate, right? Because these like grassroots charities in like war-torn countries, like these are built from like scraps, and like this is like charities that are organized by the people that are living there. Maybe like you can say that there are big charities also that is helping them, but eventually these big charities like connect to these small charities, like because like big charities cannot simply just connect to all of them. Maybe you can say they can be social workers, but I still think that the initiative of the people is still gonna be much more better, because like these people have the incentive to help what is being affected by the community, right? This is something that those big and proven charities don't have, right? They don't have the incentive to do so, and thus this is like why these charities have like so much more. There's like so much more charities now, and there's like so much more options, and where that we can really help, right? And like during this COVID pandemic, the context, like they don't have the urgency to ensure that the help they provide is the most effective kind, but the purpose of them is still very urgent, right, ladies and gentlemen? Like true, maybe that the charity might not have the fastest way to channel them, but this is the charity that is currently exposed, that is currently known by these individuals, right? This is the charity that's able to reach out to them. Like maybe this grassroots movement is like making like social media campaigning, and maybe you can say that these big companies are like also doing it, but when it's like when this campaign is like your friend, you're of course you're gonna be more incentivized, right? And it's something that we say that is really important, right? Because we don't want to be able to lose this connection, right? And the one that is gonna have the impact, of course, when these charities disappear, are the one that will be more suffering, the ones that are suffering, right? Because when people only choose to give money to the charities that have the capacity to show the maximum effectiveness, then under the proposition, then these charities that are like grassroots are not able to receive proper funding anymore, and these people will only be encouraged to give money to charities that are able to prove this effective altruism, right? Thus limiting the amount of funding that these charities receive. So thus the government cannot assume the worst case scenario when these charities squander their money if they fail to do so, because notice, like first there'll be backlash due to the amount of misuse of amount of money, and second, even if the charities mismanage marginal amounts, it's still gonna be better, because at least there's still gonna be more charities to funnel money into those that they need and create a better society. Very proud to oppose this motion.
Thank you for that speech. Now we can move to the Deputy Prime Minister.
Okay. My name is Satria Bagaskara. I'm the opposition. If you have any POI, please just unmute yourself. I will take one POI, maybe two, I don't know. It depends. Preferred gender pronoun, he or him. Okay. Let me pull up my timer real quick. Cool. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a few points in this debate which I would like to discuss with you. Now, number one is first that the first speaker of opening government said that this is urgent. They want to show their burden of proof of urgency because they believe that we have a lack of resource and time. So why spending means effective spending. Okay, which I will rebut. And then another point that they brought was that this will ensure effective spending, which I believe is not true. And then another one is that they said, she said, I forgot, but the first speaker said that instead of donating to one victim, we should ensure that they donate to a wide range of people affected by said tragedy. Okay, now moving on to the points that the open government second speaker had said. I believe that that the second government speaker's extension is all about clarity and how these fundings will be clear once they follow effective altruism, which I think is not true. Now I'm going to move on to the rebuttals. So number one, government assumed that charity organizations that don't follow effective altruism will only use those donations to 1 or 2 victims instead of many victims. However, that is completely false. I will explain that on my extension argument. Second is that the government stated that we have limited amount of resource. That statement is true to a certain extent. However, we need to realize that even though these resources are limited out there in this world, how much resources are there out there? Okay, we need to ensure what we need to ensure is not how wisely or effectively we allocate these funds. However, what we need to prioritize is that we ensure that we gather as much of these resources available as much as possible. And this is why we support charities that still don't even follow effective altruism, because it pushes availability and accessibility, which I will explain in my argument extension, which has already been explained on my first speaker. So please do note that. Now, number 3, clarity. Yeah, right. First, it's not effective under your side, under the government side of the house, which leads to my second point in this rebuttal. We believe that government side of the house have failed to understand the difference between organizations that follows effective altruism and ones that don't. The difference is not in clarity, however, the difference is in how they spend their money, or rather how they allocate their funds, their donation funds. It's been explained within the info slide, and I believe their clarity argument should be discredited once and for all, but I'll just move on from that. But even before that, before I even move on to my substantive, I find it very naive from the government side of the house that they hardly believe that they believe very hardly that charities that have a proven effective method means that they're impossible to be scams. Now, I'm going to explain that further in my extension argument. Moving on. As the opposition side, we believe that the existence of legitimate charities that uses effective altruism is a good thing. However, it shouldn't be the only option for people to go to when they decided out of their own generosity to make a donation. Now, how these charities choose to allocate their funds is, of course, the responsibilities of each organization and their choice. However, we need to see it from the point of view of these charity organizations in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. We need to understand that different organizations have different goals, different backgrounds, and different capabilities. For example, there are grassroots organizations built under the volition of a group of people or even individuals who feel moved by a certain tragedy and feel the need to help. And then in comparison to that, there are bona fide or big, well-funded agencies or organizations that have a well-structured, well-sponsored, well-managed with many employees that work together to build a complete system that manages the incoming donation funds. There's charities that focus on different scales of problems. Okay. Yeah. POI's taken.
Okay, thank you. We said that the likelihood is much lesser for people to get scammed in our site because the people will be able to see.
I understand.
To see the evidence of the issue that we're funding for, right?
Yes.
So in your site, how will you lessen the risk of scam without doing nothing and just fund on
yes,
charities?
I understand.
Thank you.
Okay, so okay, then going on to further rebuttals again. Now, we believe that under their side of the house, they believe that if you have a proven effective method, that means it is less likely for them to be scams, right? However, we believe that that's not true. What differentiates between scams that have proven effective methods and scams that don't have proven effective methods is that scams with proven effective methods means they've done their research. They've made effort in scamming people. And which one will people believe more? Scams that have proven effective methods or scams that don't? So in which scenario do you think that scams are more likely to happen under their side of the house? Okay, now moving on to my extensions. We need to understand that focus on different scales of problems. Some go big, some focus on small things. We know some charity organizations are focusing on huge things like provision of water in African areas suffering from clean water depletion. And then you have charities on the other side of the spectrum, which focuses on groups or individuals, for example, cities, villages, people suffering from sickness. And that alone is already a reason why we can't push every organization to follow effective altruism, because these result in the difference of capabilities between these kinds of charity organizations. When we're talking about effective altruism, we're going to be talking about the researches and the effort to find the perfect way to allocate the charity funds so that it can strike with the most effect effectively. However, these researches requires these organizations to spend their resources and capitals, which I quote, they say is limited. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that under our side of the house, it's still better compared to under their side of the house. So in comparison, let's compare the two cases under both sides of the house. We have proven to you why it's so much better under our side of the house because it pushes availability and accessibility, unlike under their side of the house, where everything has to be proven and everything has to be done through research. And we've proven to you, even under their side of the house, where they try to argue with clarity and scams, we've proven that under our side of the house, that it's even less likely that people would want to follow scams that don't even have proof. Okay, so we as the opposing side of the house still proud to propose, and we believe that we've won that we've won this debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that speech. Now to open the cases from closing half, let's call upon the member of government. Here.
All right, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, there is no pronounced preference for me. You can call me wherever you want. And in case there is any POI, please just make sure to unmute your device. All right, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Judge, the opening bench always talks about purpose of charities and what we want when we do charities, the importance of charities, and etc. We believe when people decided to do charities, they already know what they want and they already know the purpose of charity itself. And they also talk about how proven effectiveness of altruism is going to take time and etc. But we believe that let's see what will happen when people decided to only fund in charity that adhere effective altruism. Let's assume that in this case, we assume that effective altruism already existed. So what will happen when people only choose to fund at charities that adheres effective altruism? Starting from our worst case, there the OO says that then like another charities that like probably don't have the database of how effective they are in altruism will no longer have accepted any credits or any funds. We think it is okay because when that happened, when one charity organization didn't have no longer receive any funds from the resources, they will then try to find a way to to make their charity as effective as possible. For example, if they are talking about the time that they need, I think it is all right because when people are like competing about finding the ways to make the charities goes way much more effective than the other, then it will start that people will like search for a way that they will donate for people that is like for more urgent and etc. because they at the first place they wanted to reach the effectiveness of altruism for the sake of getting fund and resources from other people, right? Because if they didn't do so, then they won't have any funding from other people. Basically, they talk about other charity will no longer have like ability to like grow anymore. But back again to what I explained, that is exactly all right, because then they will find a way to like reach this effective of altruism. And I think with the effectiveness with every charity organization looking for the effectiveness of altruism, then the charity itself will grow into a better organization at the first place, because they will one by one for the sake of like they still wanted to stand, they still wanted to get funding from resources. They need to be like providing this effective altruism for the people, right? Then in our best case scenario, then then the organization will start to like, you know, all organization for the sake of still being there, for the sake of still being able to do charity to people, they will find the most effective way to do altruism for in the first place. So nextly, I'm going to characterize that social movement that give urgency for the funding charities must give their best reputation, right? Back again to the very beginning of my argumentation, where I say that the moment when we only fund for the charity organization that like only that provide us with effective altruism, at that very moment, every organization, we believe every charity organization will find their way to like make their charity be more effective. That is what going to happen in our side if we only fund charities that are effective altruism. So even if there is going to be organization of charities that cannot provide effective altruism, that they won't get any funding, that they won't get any money from the resources. We think in the end of the day it is okay, because if they wanted to survive, if they still wanted to have resources from like the people, then they must find a way to make their charity capable to prove to the people that their charity are adhering effective altruism. And then if their interest in the first place is for altruism, and they wanted this charity organization to be like bigger and stay for a long term, then that is what they need to do. We must support people to only fund and charities that adheres effective altruism. OG only talking about how effectiveness is important for individuals, but in our side, the framing of this debate is that people will only option to concept of effective altruism. So that the urgency of the charity itself, the urgency of the people that is going to accept the people that is going to accept the charity at the first place will be the people that is the most urgent, because at the first place we want the charity to be the most effective as it is possible, right? That is why, in our case, the moment when we stopped funding charities that didn't adhere effective altruism, we believe it is okay, and we believe it will be even better in order to create the better purpose of altruism itself, and the better allocation for our charity itself. That is why we believe that individuals should only fund charities that adhere at effective altruism. For that, I close my case.
Thank you for that speech. Now coming up with the closing oppositions. A member of opposition, here.
Check, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. If you want to give any POI, you can simply unmute yourself. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge, we don't understand the case of the government bench in which they are oversimplifying that this world is that there is only a single correct thing in this complex world, that the moment you donate for a smaller charities means that you have been you have do a fault in your life, and then it is seen as something that is very simple. That is why you have to donate it to a bigger company which is more reliable. We don't think that in this world that is very complex, you have the rights to judge certain personal choice of people to where they want to donate, right? Because first of all, the government bench never tell you why that what's currently wrong in the personal choice of people. What is currently wrong in the current status quo right now, right? If the problems is about the fraud charities or the bad charities that have no clear purposes on where they want to spend the money, we see that this is the fight that we cannot control, right? Because, and we believe that every people or everyone has their own rational capacity to actually determine which they believe will do something or which they believe will be beneficial for the surroundings, right? That is why we say that since they never tell to you what is currently wrong with the personal choice that is currently happening, we don't think the argument is valid to be implemented in this debate, right? But second of all, they also tell you that it is better for us to give from a philanthropic company which is bigger, it is more effective. If we can prove you why, then it is not even effective to work based on this kind of effective altruism, we should take this debate. First of all, what makes us different with the opening bench is that the opening only tell you about the surface analysis without any, like, they never mechanize it. Why then? Without this kind of effective altruism, those kind of donation will be better distributed under their case, right? And also they never tell you about the philosophical argument as to why then it is very immoral and unjust to actually force people to donate to things that they don't consent to, for example, or things that they don't have attachment to, right? Therefore, we'll take the bullet and explain to you why then it is very important to actually appreciate personal choice and emotional bonding and let them choose to wherever they want to donate, right? First of all, let's firstly analyze why people have the willing to donate, right? Because simply charities is the extension or the product of individual emotional attachment, for example, their sympathy and empathy towards certain object, for example. Therefore, it is the product of personal experience. For example, they have been dealing with rape cases, for example. That is why they have more attachment towards victims of rape cases. That is why they want to spend more their money on those kind of victims. We say that it is very okay because first it is form of appreciating personal choice and emotional bonding by the donator, right? We say everybody has their own rights to choose who they want to help because simply the donation is coming from the personal ability in terms of financial capability. It is their money, so that's why we said that they have the full right to actually determine who they want to give because they have worked hard, for example, from 9 to 5 and still willing to do those kind of charities after all of their hard work that they never been obliged to do. That is why we said that because it is done for their own emotional contentment without any obligation to do so, and they still willing to do it, we say it is very important to actually allow them to do so, and as a form of appreciation towards their personal choice and emotional bonding towards certain object that they help, right? That is why we say that this is particularly important. But second issues in this debate, why then data-driven or effective altruism is actually less effective under our case, right? If the team, a government bench tell you how it is very effective, because simply you have no thank you, because you simply have a clear purposes on where you put your money to. We say that even the opening government and closing government already tell you on how characteristic of charity that deserve this kind of help is actually reputable charities that already have evidence of it. Means that they are currently talking about a big philanthropy or a big charities that is definitely already has a clear and sustained donation from donators, for example. This kind of big charities is actually having a clear and sustained donation from certain donators, right? Even without the help of like individuals help, they already sustain, right? Because they are simply a big philanthropist company to begin with. Therefore, they're actually not the vulnerable actor that we should talk in this debate, right? Moreover, media more likely to tap in and observe and also provides data for this kind of big philanthropist company because simply they already have the license and a lot of experience. That is why, because of all these characteristics, we don't think the actors that we should protect in this debate is this kind of big philanthropy, right? But instead, comparatively under our side, it is very important to protect this kind of minor charities that is currently in need of help. Why Why it is more effective under our case? Because first of all, we say that the basis of effectiveness is not based on the purpose, but it is based on the impact, including to the minor charities organization. Because even if you are still consist of below 50 people, we still that you still deserve to be supported. Even if you are still a newly formed charities, for example. And why we say that they are the one that really needs this charity? Because first, they are the one that is having a very lack resources to begin with. But second also, they are the one that is very fragile, for example. For example, without your help as individual, you might have been sacrificing a lot of victims, for example, because we say a lot of urgent victims more likely to tap into this kind of small charities, because in order to be registered or receive the help from a big philanthropy, you have to possess or undergo a lot of bureaucracy. For example, you have to get the registration fees, or you have to go with a complicated procedure, which is very hard and spend a lot of time. Well, disaster is something that is unexpected and should be stopped as soon as possible, right? That is why we say it is much more effective under our case, because it is more targeted, and a lot of urgent victim is actually coming from coming to this kind of small charities. Yes, closing government. Okay, never mind. Okay, now let's move. That is why we said that, because the most important, because the most urgent victims is actually coming to this kind of small charities, because it is having a more simple procedure. We said that they are the one that is truly deserve the help from individuals to actually sustain, right? Now, third of all, let's talk about the third issues in this debate. Why then, by our case, on their case, the moment we only allow this kind of help for only a big philanthropy, it will disincentivize like the altruist community or altruist activists to establish a charity organization. Because currently in the status quo, the reason why youngsters currently so motivated to build a charity organization, because they are optimistic that there will be huge or accessible source of support from society, right? For example, like Rumah Faye, which is established to give help for women and child, right? That is why by this kind of scenario coming from government means that you are harming this kind of youngster that is having such an altruist purpose to establish this kind of housings, because maybe you are shutting down their source of help to actually visualize their dreams of helping other people, right? Because in order to get support, you force them to be big, you force them to have license, you force them to be reputable, which is having such a very high entry barrier for this kind of youngster and very inaccessible. That is why on their case, the charity is very discriminative to begin with, and don't buy into their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for that speech. Now moving on to government group here.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
My pure preference is that you can just chat me on Zoom chat if I want to. Okay, wait. I'm so sorry. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Two things to be clarified in this debate. First of all, is what exactly the problems that is happening in this debate in the first case of this of the government cases at the first place, right? Because that's what is being questioned by the closing opposition. I think it is very clear that in status quo, people are actually opting into, like, for example, scam or something, opting into the scam funding charities or something else, right? That, like, we think that it is very clear already explained by our opening government that this is something that is very urgent, that people as individual, we also, even if we want to do altruism, there's a very much urgency of us to actually try to prevent ourselves from funding such scam in the first place, right? But second of all, is that we are going to clarify to you on how exactly the effective altruism would look like on our side of the house, right? We think that their arguments about, we are going to be assessing only, like, we are going to only funding like a very big philanthropy companies or something else like that. We don't think that is the reason why effective altruism exists in the first place, right? It's very clear that effective altruism is something like a very conceptual, that we are trying to search which company funding company that is actually like very much urgent. Who are people that actually targeting the most vulnerable people that exist in the status quo or something else, right? That right. So coming to my clashes is that the first one we are going to prove to you why in principle the first of all is on how this effective altruism, the process of when we opt into effective altruism is exactly it's exactly how we are going to make a better system and mechanisms of how we are going to fund in the future if our proposal is accepted, right? But second of all is also on how I'm going to explain furthermore on how exactly that process will correlate it to the interest of the individuals and also to the community of the altruism in the end of the day, right? So first of all, coming to the worst scenario that coming to our coming from opposition's bans that they are trying to attack on us, right? I think we can generalize that the cases from opening opposition and closing oppositions is mostly to talk the same thing. Is that the first one, they are very much afraid that the like for example that because that the first thing is that they are talking about the option or choices whether people want to opt into into whatever altruism it is, right? I've already explained to you that first of all, no, people will most likely to try to like don't enter some scam or fake altruism in the first place, right? But second of all, they are telling you about they are telling you that our worst scenario is on how the security of information, how the informations will be collected on our side of the house, right? We think that first of all, we think that in effective altruism, there will be check and balance from individuals or third party, like for example, people who assess, for example, how they say about media or something else like that to prove whether they whether this company are urgent or not in the first place. Like we think that already an answer on how there is like a very small possibility for the informations in our site to be something that is very scam. That's why it is called effective altruism in the first place, right? But second of all, even if the information is altered for their, like for example, for their sake of like popularity or something else, right? Which is what they are very scared about how philanthropy companies are able to do something like that. We think that we think that in their side of the house, such thing also happen in the first place, right? We question them how their companies are going to also be very much transparent, especially if they actually accept, like for example, a small philanthropy bodies that give small funding bodies that has no, like for example, their reputation or something else, right? Like that, right? So we think that such thing will happen on both sides of the house, but which is worse, we think that there's bigger chance for like scam or also other things to actually happen under their side of the happen under side of the house. And we question how they are going to protect these individuals as the source of funds to not enter such kind of thing. We think that under our side, it's okay when it is happening. Like for example, small companies are not. Small altruism companies are not being recognized or something else, right? It just means that they are. This just means they are not entering that. They are not success in, like for example, the assessment or the the assessments on how impactful they are, right? What we mean in this impactful is that what my first speaker has already explained to you on how, for example, the urgency to prioritize to fund, like for example, minorities, or to fund people in Gaza that is affected by the war or something else, right? Right? We think that is the thing about the effective altruisms, to prioritize the more urgent and vulnerable people. So in the end of the day, even if there are small companies that is being, like for example, neglected or something else, right? We think that is okay. There's a very much. We think that it is a very. We think that funding is something that is like a very long term. It is a very long-term project in which that they still can make their reputation, trying to make their reputations to be recognizable and to make them credible as possible. But what is important, our conclusions as the closing government is that we already told to you on how we are going to make this the urgency of effective altruism as the only choices, as the tool or as the mechanism to make sure that we are not going to that individual are protected from scam or something else, right? But second of all, we are also creating a better systematic and also systematics from the funding charities itself to become a better, and also to target the most vulnerable people. We are so proud to propose.
Thank you very much, students. Please note the post debate on call. Let's call upon the opposition group. Here.
Check, am I audible? Check.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, nice. Wait, I'm setting my timer. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge, please notice that the main premise being broke by closing government is actually the same like the opening government, which is the main premise they rely on is we should do a donation to a big company charity, for example, because they are reputable, they give more impact, and in order the money being used should be effective at the very first place. Judge, if we can prove to you why the metrics of effectivity is should not become the main metrics when we are doing charity, I think the whole argument will not be valid to this debate. And I think if we can flip this kind of idea, I think closing opposition should take this debate. First of all, they told you about the effectivity should be the main metrics because we should give impact and any other things. Judge, something that you need to be noticed is we as an individual at the moment we do a donation, for example, to any other people, it is unlike government where we don't have any responsibility to solve one big problem at the very first place. Therefore, we don't think that effectivity should not be the main metrics. So what happened under the case of team government? Since everything should based on data, we think that it limits someone's right to donate and also to channel their emotional and also to extend it to any other people. So I think at the moment, if you limit someone's personal choice, we don't think it fulfilling the idea of doing charity at the very first place. Why it's important? Because the reason why people want to do charity is they want to fulfill their own they want to fulfilling themselves with epiphany, for example, or they want to fulfilling their emotional purpose, for example. I think that's the reason why people doing charity. But under the case of team government, they limit it because it should based on data and any other thing. Therefore, it's very bad. So under the case of closing opposition, what should be the main metrics of other people when doing charity? We think the main metrics, it should be based on any other people's subjectivity. For example, if they want to donate their money in order to fulfilling the religion mission, for example, I think it's okay. They don't need to see based on data, for example. For example, if they want to have a orphanage children, for example, because they don't want They don't want that any other children, they want any other children to feel better even if they don't have parents. I think it's okay because they want to fulfilling their religion mission, for example. I think it's okay at the moment they don't help people who get COVID, for example, instead of helping people who don't have parents, for example. I think this is very okay. Subjectivity is very okay, and as long as they feel content of their activity after doing this kind of donation, I think effectivity should not become the main metrics at the very first place when you want doing charity at the very first place. But second of all, they also keep repeating about we should only donate our money to a reputable company, for example. We say no. Even if we don't donate to a big company charity, for example, we say it's okay. Because at the very first place, at the moment, you donate to a small charity body, for example, it that has no track record, it doesn't mean it's fraud. I think that it's because first, they're still new, it's small, and second of all, because it's only a small body charity, they don't have any accountant, they don't have any professional to track the track record and upload it to the bank data, for example. Therefore, they don't have, and also in order for you to be input to the big data, for example, you also need to have legal body or any other thing, which is very expensive. Therefore, I think that at the moment, when we donate to a small charity body, it doesn't mean it's also fraud, because somehow this is small because they just have limited money or limited capital to build. What is the example of small charity body, but still important that we should focus on? For example, the small organization of UMKM for ibu-ibu that is function to empower emak-emak in village, for example, to earn money and help their husband, for example, or the small organization in a village, for example, that function to recovers girls and also to empower women that is being raped, for example. I think this kind of small organization that still remains small and they don't have any accountability to be input to the big data in order to be seen by any other people. That even though this kind of organization is still small, but I think the function is still important, and also it is this kind of organization is still deserve to be held at the very first place. Therefore, it's very evil for the government that limit first of all that limit your personal choice to donate your money in order to channel your emotional, and second of all, they also neglect this kind of any other small bodies that's still important just because they don't have any data. They neglect all of the contribution at the very first place, even though their contribution is small, but it's still important for the victims. For example, that woman that is being raped at the very first place, and only this kind of organization that can help them at the very first place without taking any money or profit oriented at the very first place. Therefore, I think it's very evil for the government side at the very first place to say no. Therefore, just don't buy the case that coming from opening government. But comparatively, what will happen under our case? At the moment, we don't using this data as the basis for you to doing charity, which is based on subjectivity, like I've told you, which is the main metrics. I think our case will be better because right now, any other people, they will not be limited by data, by data. For example, they can donate their money to any other people, and they will feel happy, and they will not get any inner conflict after they donate their money and help any other people. Because what's important, if you already give your money to help any other people, but inside yourself you get that inner conflict, you don't get any comfortability at the very first place, and you cannot fulfilling your religion mission, for example. Therefore, I think the functions at the very first place for you to do a charity to help any other people will not be fulfilled at the very first place. That's the principle, which is very important, but still cannot be answered by the whole bench from the government side. And also, why our case is still better compared to the opening opposition. Only our case that mechanized to you what is the vulnerable actor that also need to be focused, which is this small charity company, and also the main principle or the main metrics that we should consider when we are doing this charity at the very first place. Under this kind of comparison, we believe that closing opposition deserves to get this victory point. I close my case.
Thank you for that speech. Thank you also for the debate. Let's for the participants, please go out from the breakout room so the judges could deliberate.